Alrighty, I know it's hard to believe. Well, maybe it's just me, but it is week 6 in our class. And boy, is there some interesting and fun stuff this week. So we do section 8 and 9. And I just finished earlier today the Learn Together for week 6. And in there, I had not done section 9 yet. So section 8 is where you take his weather app and you then create both the front end and the back end. But then in section 9, you deploy that to Heroku. Okay. So I'm going to show you some help and what additional requirement you have for section 8 and 9, and specifically section 9. But I also show you a file I created that I actually walked through today that helped me remember some of those steps, because there's a lot of just detailed steps that he goes through. And having kind of a summary of that, I'm not going to tell you to work word for word, but it is a summary of the important commands you need to take whatever you've created. And in this case, and you'll see this in week 6 Learn Together, is that if you don't deploy your Learn Together work for week 6, I take off 15 points. So, but you have to do at least one time in this class the deployment to Heroku, and you really want to do this piece. So you have to do it for the code up for section 9, 8 and 9, but section 9 specifically. So let me show you both of those things. First, in section 8 and 9, I've added this line today, which basically says to get full credit for this work, you need to also give me your Heroku URL. And this again is where you're doing the weather app, okay? And what I will provide both in the Learn Together for week 6 and in this one is a link to some summarized commands that you need to go through, because it's a little bit intimidating when you first look at this. And if you've never created an SSH key, great experience to know how to do that. But first, see if you have one, create the key, start up the agent, make sure you add the agent, okay? And this is the part that ours is just a little different, right? So because of the way Heroku is going to deploy your code, you need to actually put the remote. And I give you an example of, like, for my repo, how I did that. Okay, so just FYI. And then when you go to add the Heroku keys, set up the app, you can give it a name or you can just let it default to whatever. Make sure you change your JSON package.json to point to your location of your app.js file. Update your port. This is all stuff that you do in this section. I'm just summarizing it here. Make sure you change the app.listen reference. And this is because when you're on the server, it's different than when you're local. And then remove any HTTP localhost 3000 in your client side, or else that'll break it. And then here's the process to actually look at your remotes and then add to your remote. And your remote is where your code is going for GitHub, for Git. And you're just adding one so that in addition to GitHub, you're also pushing your code to a repo on Heroku based on your app name. Again, if you haven't watched all of 9, this will make a little bit of like, what are you talking about? And this last step is way important because he'll show you a way to just push. And because we're doing subdirectories, and they're basically referred to as subtrees in this context, you have to actually tell it what directory. Okay. Now this is the one specifically for the web server. I actually just now completed it for what I showed in week 6, and I want to show you that. So here is, oh, that's my local. So here is my web server up, my code out on Heroku with an app, a name, a URL, and I'll provide that. So this still works. I had like 2 things I had to fix to get through this, but it still works the way I showed you in the video. It'll still present the JSON information. So that is what I hope helps you when you're doing section 9. And what I said, and I'll just reiterate a little bit of what I said about the learn together, is that if you just get your, let me scroll down to section 6, learn together, week 6. And I said this in here, like if you don't do the whole server, so let's now context switch. So it's now, instead of talking about the stuff you're doing along with Andrew, you need to get full points for the code up. You have to deploy the weather app. For week 6, learn together, I did that for my specific application. And for the email app, I think several of you are following along with my email example. I think Shane's doing his own, which is, I think, good and helpful to do, right? So just know that if you don't, for some reason, if you don't do in the learn together, the part of pushing to Heroku, it's 15 points off. So it's not major points, but I want to give you an incentive, because so if you do it here, that means you will have done it twice. Okay. Twice, to have that experience of doing it and seeing the differences in the way you deploy. Okay. So I just want to tell you that and show you that it does work. I will give you the link to here to give you some of that heads up, because there's some things, like in our case, where we, if you have a problem with it not adding the remote, here's the commands to do that. You can just look at the remotes to make sure they're there. Just to show you, let me actually show you on mine. Like if I was to do git remote -v, right? So what I see now is I see Heroku listed in addition to my GitHub. And if you don't have this listed and this gets this made, because I had a problem with when I did this, it didn't update my Heroku with that. And so I had to manually do it. So I give you the commands in here for how to do that. Okay, so just know that that's the case. I hope this helps you out. Like I said, I was happy to have my code actually get my code published. I did have one issue where I actually had, and even though I had it in my instruction, where on the JSON file, on the script, you put start, I updated it to say source.app.js, but I hadn't put it in the right place. And that was the other thing. And I'll just show you this, is that if it doesn't work, there's this nice really command, and I had to do it. And you can see it right here where it actually gives you the log files. So you can do some troubleshooting to try to figure out. And actually now my log file is clean. It wasn't clean before because I was getting error messages. The log file is also the output of the console log that you do on the server side, which is kind of fun. So just in Control-C, because it'll sit there and just give you real-time logs, because you can also look at past logs. So my point here, this is, I mean, we're getting to the place in this course where these are so good. These skills of writing code for the server and the client, deploying that code to a service like Heroku. There are many others out there, but Heroku is the very commonly used one for folks that are new, just because it's fairly easy. You can't actually, for those of you that know about GitHub Pages, you can't actually deploy this to GitHub Pages because, as of the last time I knew, they don't actually allow you to run server-side code, only client-side code. So just FYI, these are great skills. But here's what I want you to, so ask many questions you have about this part that I've covered. But here's what I want you to know. We now shift gears after this week. And for the rest of the class, which is 3 weeks, I know, right? The stuff that we're going to do, the MongoDB, right? Knowing how to both set up on your local system and write to the MongoDB database. Also, you'll get introduced to promises, which is the newer paradigm to callbacks. And then you'll actually create your API. And then on the very last section, you'll implement a security system. Let me just tell you, and you'll hear me say this again, is that if you have along the way, as you're learning this, especially when you get to section 11 where you're creating the API, if you learn it and then go implement for your concept, create that server-side API. When you get to the last part, all you're going to be doing is implementing, following along with him to implement the idea of login, because you can do that to your develop it one, your last develop it for this class. So hopefully you got that, right? Yes, I'll be saying it again because of the importance of that, because of the timeline that we have at the end. It's so compressed for a class like this. So FYI, I am next semester for sure teaching CIT84 front-end frameworks. I'm going to be doing React. I've decided after talking to a couple of people, I was going to do React and Angular, but I've decided it's completely React. If you're interested, it'll be Wednesday nights at the Hive. So let me know if you have any questions about that. Otherwise, have a great weekend, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye.